Good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual But Not Religious Show. I'm your host, George Lewis. I've got an excellent guest tonight and a great guest for next week. Next week, I've got Kurt Remington. Kurt wrote a book called Simple Meditation, and he just lays this meditation out so that it's so easy and so gentle and so powerful. You'll want to be sure and come back. Very interesting guy. You'll enjoy the conversation. Whether you're an experienced meditator or you've never meditated before, come and join us. I got a great guest tonight, but before I go there, let me tell you a bit about the Spiritual Broadcasting Network, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and about the Spiritual But Not Religious Show, because they're really pretty tied together. The term spiritual but not religious has, matter of fact, it's taken quite a beating here recently from other religions, and it's kind of interesting. I do a lot of research on the internet about spiritual but not religious, and the 99% of what I find about spiritual but not religious are from other religions complaining about and suggesting that we're not what we say we are. We're not really spiritual but not religious, and that we can't be, of course, without the intermediary and the church. So, but as of the last census, 20% of those in the United States claimed to be spiritual but not religious, as opposed to being affiliated with a church. People are really leaving the churches in droves. They're just not finding the kind of satisfaction that they want. Now, the problem for us is that because we're so diverse, spiritual but not religious covers a lot of territory and brings in a lot of different definitions of a higher power, God, source, energy, whatever you might want to call it. And so we really don't have a voice, a place where we can gather. And so I founded the Spiritual Broadcasting Network to be able to bring those various voices to you, to the public. And the Spiritual But Not Religious Show is pretty self-explanatory. I bring on mostly authors, cutting edge in the transformation movement. I believe, and have for a while, that there's a spiritual revolution, if you will, a transformation in progress. It's been in progress for quite a number of years, and I think we're reaching kind of a tipping point with that, where I think enough people eventually start to think in new ways, in new terms, that what will happen is that we will transform. And the world today really operates from its dark side rather than its light side. We live in a world of polarity, light and dark. And every human being, every one of us, has a light and dark side. Unfortunately, and you can see it in play now with the greed and the avarice and the pride and the ego and all this going on out there, those are all aspects of the dark side. And so the world really has functioned more from that dark side than the light. You get a mix of both, but the overwhelming influence has been the dark side. And I think that the transformation will flip from the overriding thing being the dark side to it being the light side. We'll still have a mix, light and dark. We're not going to get away from that. It's not going to be a perfect world. And we probably won't see any recognizable delineation point, where you can say, okay, it happened today. We had this transformation. Kind of like what happened in the Dark Ages. We went from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, which were two completely different things, but there's no real point in time that you can put your finger on and say, okay, it happened here. And I think that kind of thing is happening for us now. It's going to have to. The thing about evolution is about survival and about those who are most adaptable survive. It isn't the strongest or any of that. It's the most adaptable. And so we're going to have to adapt or we'll really kind of cease to exist. So we're broadcasting. Tom, put that picture up of where we're at. We're broadcasting live from Sarasota, Florida. We live it's a wonderful place down here. You get to Sarasota, look us up. We'll have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and we'd look forward to meeting you. If Tommy, have we got my guest tonight is Naini Nakagawa, who is the founder of MatchMySpirit.com. She's a unique lady, a real high energy, really a spiritually good person. I know you're going to love her tonight. We have Naini on the phone. Naini, good evening.
Hey, George, how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
Good, good. It's nice to be here with you.
I'm glad that you're here. I've been looking forward to this conversation with you. You're a very interesting woman, very, very interesting, and some of the things you're doing are pretty. I like them very much. So, before we get into talking about, we got several things to talk about. We've got your endeavor with MatchMySpirit.com, which is actually not just a dating service, but a community. Mm-hmm. And you also you advise people on dating. You have a 7-point thing that you follow with dating. You raise your children spiritually. So you've got quite a plate to choose from as far as topics are concerned. You're from Mumbai? I'm
originally from Bombay. I still like to call it Bombay.
You're gonna hold to the old ideas, huh?
Yeah, I'm originally from Bombay, but I've been in New York here for a long time, and it's interesting. Both the cities are very similar.
Are they?
New York. So.
How old were you when you left Bombay?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I think I was like 23.
Oh, really? Okay, so you were an adult by the time you left and came to the States. Well, what led you to come here? Did your family come, or you come by yourself, or how did that?
Yeah, it was. I had gotten married. It was my first marriage, and that time, that's when I came here.
Okay. And your husband was from the States?
Yes, my ex-husband.
Ex-husband.
He was not from the States. He was Indian, but we met, and that's how we got married.
So you're a Sikh, is that correct?
Yes. My God, you know too much about me. That's scary.
No, it's good. Everything I found was great about you. No. You're very. Matter of fact, you and I have a lot of parallel things spiritually. You talk about one of you're a devotee of the Paramahansa Yogananda, who had a huge impact on my spiritual life.
Oh, wow.
And I was in California in the Self-Realization Fellowship out there for a bit. I don't know, you didn't mention Patanjali. You a follower of Patanjali's work?
Well, yes, Yogananda followed Patanjali, and he talked about Patanjali, so definitely. But yes, I've been a devotee of Yogananda for almost 30 years. I was blessed to get the book, Autobiography for Yogi, when I was, I think, 11 or 12.
Oh, that's great.
Bombay.
I was considerably older than that. So you were Zoroastrian, is that correct?
No, I was Sikh. I was brought up Sikh. I went to a Parsi school, which is the Zoroastrian religion. It's one of the oldest religions in the world.
Okay, yes, I know. Well, you know what's interesting is it's as old as it is, we don't hear a lot about it here in the East. There were, you had Iranians also were part of that?
Yes, they're basically Persian, and they follow the religion of fire. That's what they call it.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very homogeneous community, and they marry within themselves, and very devout community, and extremely illustrious. Some of the most wealthy people in India are Parsi, so there's just respect for that community.
So when you were there, how was the Iranian thing and with your hostile neighbors just to the north there? Well, I've totally lost my train of thought.
Are you talking about Pakistan?
Pakistan. I couldn't think. You would think I would be able to think of that as much as it's in the news and been a problem. What were things like, back when you were 21 years old there?
Well, politically things are always the way they are, but people are people. We all know that.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, some of my best friends are Pakistani and extremely, nice people, very well read, very well educated, good people. So politically, things are, like I said, things are always the way they are. You can't really have much control over them. But otherwise, it was fine. Growing up in Bombay was a lot of fun and very multicultural,
uh-huh.
and very much like New York. So I was very blessed to have that kind of a lifestyle.
So, as far as here locally now in New York, you attend a self-realization fellowship up there, or you just...
Yes, yes. I'm actually very, very active with the New York City Center.
Uh-huh.
And I volunteer there, and I teach Sunday school. Been teaching that for a long time. So it's a big part of my life, Yogananda and the teachings. And, of course, I have tremendous respect for all spiritual teachers and friends, close friends from different spiritual paths. And that was the reason I also started the website, Match My Spirit, to bring all these people from these different paths together under one umbrella.
Well, the East finally met the West here when Maharishi Mahat Yoga came here. Up until that point, it was a pretty small community. I learned to meditate with him back in 1978, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
So meditation's been a big part of my life.
That's great. I have to tell you a funny story about that.
Oh, please.
My husband, my current husband, he is half Japanese. This is a real New York story.
Yeah, well, I thought from your last name that you must have gotten some kind of an injection from somewhere else.
Half Japanese, George, and believe it or not, half Jewish.
Ah.
With an Indian first name.
Oh, wow. What's his first name?
His first name is Aman. Aman means peace in Hindi. And none of his parents followed their religion. They followed Mahesh Maharishi Yogi.
Ah, really?
And they did the TM meditation and everything. So that was interesting when you mentioned TM.
Right.
That in.
Well, it's a lot smaller world than what we think, and we're all a lot more alike than what we want to admit. Right. And unfortunately, we just don't want to. Human nature doesn't be such that it wants to really be inclusive. If you're a little different, we get a little exclusive, and I think that causes an awful lot of our troubles.
Right.
Yeah. Well, your site, your matchmyspirit.com, really is kind of a melting pot, isn't it?
Yes.
Spiritual melting pot.
Yes, and that was the whole idea of founding this site. We basically thought, there were many individuals I used to meet here in New York and in California who were spiritual and who followed different paths like, Amachi, Sri Ravi Shankar, Art of Living, which is a very beautiful path as well, Paramahansa Yogananda, and Guru Mai. And then they often used to talk about how difficult it was to find a spiritual partner who follows their teachings and the same values. So there was no other website that had this, this accommodation of bringing all the spiritual paths together, and that's how we decided to build the site so that people can get together and really find someone from this spiritual path. So, yeah, it is a melting pot. Thank God.
Well, and I understand it's getting to be a pretty large melting pot. Tom's telling me you have something like 40,000 members, or over 40,000?
Yeah, what happened was, George, we started off as a dating site. Just like a year ago, a little bit over a year. And we thought it'll be a small dating site, and we'll have people come in, and they'll, subscribe to the site, and the site will grow. But then along the way, many people who were not single, they said, why don't you just make it a networking site, a spiritual networking site. So we said we'll make it a holistic networking site. And we just opened it up, and we got in a lot of chiropractors and doctors, a lot of people from the alternate medicine field.
Right.
And they got in together, and then we were going to a lot of holistic expos here in the East Coast. And we were exhibiting there, and we made contacts there. So it just grew into a very big network. So we call it the Match My Spirit Network now, and we help a lot of people.
So it's kind of morphed into far more than what you initially had planned then.
Yes, and then we got some press. We were in Fox News, and so it was, that kind of built it up, and people saw that this was something that was not set up like a pure business, so to speak, but it was something from our hearts where we really wanted to do, like I was in the fashion business for 20 years.
Right.
So, it was not something that I just founded, out of making money. It was more from helping people, bringing spiritual communities together, and thank God
it was a heart thing.
Yes, it's from our heart.
And that's what this spiritual broadcasting network is in this show. It's strictly a love thing. I think we've reached a time where more people are really tuned into the fact that we need to talk to one another, and we need to understand our diversities and to get to know each other. It's when we're strangers that the fear gets born. If I'm sitting across the table from you eating dinner, it doesn't matter if you're Pakistani or Russian or Japanese or Jewish or whatever you might be. Everything changes then. That's one of the wonders of the internet, isn't it?
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
Let's said about it, right? I mean, it's like there's just no end to it of what the internet has done for all of us. So yeah.
And I don't think our imaginations can really wrap around where it's going to take us either. And it's going to take us places that we can't. I think we can't comprehend. Right at this point.
Have you joined Google Plus? That's like the question everyone's asking.
I am, as a matter of fact. I think I put you in one of my circles there on Google Plus. Did you see that?
Yes, now it's the Google Plus circle. It was the Facebook. I don't know where we're going to go from here.
Yeah, well, it's like I think. Well, you were talking about getting press and things kind of took off for you with Fox News and that. You look to me like you're pretty good at marketing. Did you have something to do with that press with Fox News, or did they just discover you by accident?
No, actually, somebody recommended us as a dating site. They wanted to do an article on it was for Valentine's Day.
Right.
They do an article on different websites besides the eHarmony and the Match.com and the regular sites. So something more specific. And then they saw that this was a spiritual dating site, and they loved the idea and the energy behind it. So they did the article.
Yeah, well, I think you got a real good thing going there, many different ways. Let's talk about the dating part of it, and then we'll talk some about the networking part. You have a little video on 7 tips for dating, and I thought what I'd like to have you do, if you don't mind, is kind of let's go through this one at a time, and chat about each one as we do. You up for that?
Absolutely.
Great. So what's tip number 1?
Tip number 1 is keep toxic people away from you.
What happens if you're dating a toxic person?
Oh, keep them away.
Stay away. I agree wholeheartedly.
This is a big one. A lot of us have messed up our happiness by having toxic people in our lives and thinking that we can deal with it and it'll get better. It's not going to get better.
Oh, and worse than that, thinking that somehow or other because we're so wonderful, they'll change.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
this has happened to all of us. I talk often about this. I do a lot of public speaking here in New York. In fact, I'm speaking at the New Life Expo this weekend. So I talk about this, and then when people think about it and actually put this in their lives, they see the difference. And then they email me and tell me, wow, this is fantastic. It's very elementary, very basic, but we don't realize that this is something that we should do. We are not helping someone who's going through a difficult situation or who's angry or who's trying to put us down or who's got childhood issues. We're not helping them by being with them and pulling ourselves down. So what I say is keep a distance. We don't want to be harsh to anyone. So keep a distance. You can pray for them. And I think
are there some warning signs? You get all these hormones running around in your body, and you start to get that rose-colored glasses. You get blinded a little bit. Are there some real warning signs that to tell you if you're hooked up with a toxic person? Because people really they extend the absolute best that they can be for a good long period before they settle into their old selves, you know.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about toxic people in general. I'm not talking about just a toxic person in a relationship.
I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying generally that's the first step, the cleaning step. Even if it is your family, you know, you deal with them, deal with the issues, and then back off.
Right.
Don't keep them in your energy field. Where a relationship is concerned, if you find any signs of toxicity, it's just better to get, you know, to completely back off. There's no question of it.
Right.
It would be stupidity to get into a relationship with this toxic. So first cleaning step is remove toxic people out of your life. If it's a family member, deal with them and pray for them, but keep them out of your energy field. So that is tip number 1. Do you want me to talk about tip number 2?
You go right on to number 2.
Tip number 2 is whatever is your spiritual path, whatever it is, whether you go to a temple or a mosque or a meditation center, whatever it is, give it priority number 1. Give it priority number 1. A lot of people, when they're dating or when they're in a relationship or when their careers are going well, they forget about this. They forget about the fact that it's important to be grounded. It's important to have that connection with the universe or God, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And this is my, you know, these 7 tips that I talk about, this is not theory. This is something I always talk about in my classes, that it is not theory. These are tried and tested. And I've done this on myself too.
Comes out of your personal experience.
My personal experience, and then a lot of clients who have counseled, they have used it and they've seen their lives completely change.
Well, you know, the thing about, you know, in the spiritual but not religious community, there are an awful lot of people who don't really have, you know, a community that they're a part of, a place to go to. So your site is really pretty neat as far as, you know, being able to find people that they can connect up with that are like-minded. But so it's not that easy to you know, like for everybody to you know, like meet up with somebody. That's for sure.
Yep. So I say give this priority number 1. You know, don't give any person, anybody, more priority than your connection with the universe. A good way to do that, an easy tip is volunteer in your place of worship, or volunteer at you know, any place that is needed, you know, where volunteering is needed, and just give. A lot of pain comes to us is because we're always thinking of ourselves. You know, people who are always thinking of themselves are really the most unhappy people, you know, if you look at it. So I say get out of yourself, go out there, volunteer. My husband and I do something very cute. We live in New York City, right? So what we do is we make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Now, you can't get more American than that, right?
That's pretty American right there.
And I'm like, anyway, so peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, we make those. We make a bag of those, and then when we travel by the subway or we take the Long Island Railroad, we give it to anybody who we think needs it, you know, any homeless person or any older, you know, senior person who looks like they could use a little love. And we give a sandwich. It may sound a little corny.
No.
Such an American word again, but you know what? It's fantastic. It's very simple. It costs $20, but it's fantastic. So I make my son do that too, and you know, I think that's a good way of getting out of yourself and feeling good about yourself. You know, when you are grounded on a spiritual path, I tell a lot of people about this. You get a lot of security. You kind of like the security kind of just adds on to your repertoire and your personality, and you gain a lot of confidence because you're very grounded, and that's a very sexy quality.
Absolutely.
You know, and that is a quality that will attract your, you know, the right partner for you when you get out of yourself. So that is tip number 2. Focus on the path.
So being of service, and tip number 2, what's the tip itself again?
Whatever.
Stay close to your spiritual connection, right?
Give it priority number 1.
Okay, cool. And number 3?
Number 3 is exercise and diet. This is something that's not given importance when our hormones are rushing and when we're meeting someone who we think is very exciting and could be the person. I say, you know what? Keep your exercise and your diet as healthy as possible. Why? Couple of reasons. One, again, it grounds you. If you're exercising regularly, it will keep you grounded. It will keep your mind alert. If your mind is alert, you'll make correct choices. You'll not make choices out of crazy emotion.
So you have some emotional sobriety and some clarity in your thinking.
Exactly. You said it. So exercise and diet, and I use the Kaizen method. Many people don't know about
what method
is
it?
the Kaizen method, Judd?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, this is something so cool. The Kaizen method, it's a Japanese word, and the Japanese businessmen and in their political circles, they use this theory. It's called slow and steady improvement. Like you improve, but very slowly and very steadily.
Right.
There was a doctor who used this, a therapist actually. He used this in his therapy, and there was a lady who was very, very heavyweight, single mom with 2 kids, and she was having major issues, health issues. So he said, if I tell her to go on an aerobics class, she ain't doing it. If I tell her to go on a diet, she's not going to do it. She's a single mom. So he said, you know what? Just march in front of the TV for a minute for a week. That's all. Just march. And when you're eating, just throw the first bite out. Just small, slow and steady. And she did that. And they kept increasing this, and they kept doing this for like, I think 6 to 8 months. And literally in 8 months, she was able to do a full aerobics program and diet, and all her issues, weight loss, all her issues just evaporated. So I always ask people that don't go crazy exercising. Go slow and steady. And use this Kaizen method in your life in general.
So for our audience who's not familiar with that, spell that for us.
It's Kaizen.
Kaizen.
Not for anyone in Europe or Asia, it's Kaizen. I haven't said that for a long time.
Zed, and if you're from Australia, it's Zed.
It's Zed. In Canada, it's Zed.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is tip number 3.
Okay.
Exercise and diet. Tip number 4 is one of my favorites, and it's also one of the most important. It is, whatever is your spiritual path, no matter what, add meditation in your life.
Yes.
It doesn't matter where you are from. It doesn't matter if you're doing your namaz. The Muslims do their namaz very devoutly for 5 times, or a Jewish person does his regular prayers and goes to the synagogue. It doesn't matter. Add meditation, because meditation has this medical effect. It physiologically, the effect on your body is just off the charts. And I'll make it very clear to you is that when we meditate and we focus on the third eye or the pineal gland, we are, and this is a medical fact, we are balancing the left and right hemispheres of our brains. And once we start getting balanced this way, we are more grounded and we're more alert.
Absolutely.
So meditation is fantastic,
It also hooks you into your intuition, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, once you meditate, that's a very good point you brought up, George, because I meet a lot of people who are intellectuals. Somehow, I don't know why, I meet a lot of doctors, from Harvard and Columbia and everything, which is great. But, your intellect can develop in all sorts of ways, but what we really need is wisdom.
Absolutely.
And wisdom comes only through meditation. I'm glad you brought this up. Wisdom comes through meditation, because after you meditate, you develop intuition. And when you use that intuition, you're using your wisdom. So meditation is key. And again, if you want to meditate, you can just go on the internet. There are so many meditation centers. A good one, of course, is Self-Realization Fellowship of Yogananda. They teach meditation on their website. You can learn it tonight, if you have to. So that is tip number 4, meditation. Do you want me to go to the other tips?
Let's go to step 5.
Okay. Tip number 5 is, I'm going to talk about tip number 5 and 6. I'm going to kind of mix that together. Is that if you like someone, if you feel attracted to someone, this is especially for the single people, be friends for at least 5 to 6 months, at least 5 to 6 months before starting to date. Before actually starting to date. A lot of people say, oh, this is ridiculous, 5, 6 months, how are we going to do it? It takes that much time for our hormone or neurotransmitter dopamine to start settling down. Because we all know when we are together with someone who we really like and it's all new and exciting and the hormones are flying, dopamine is very, very high in our system.
It's very intense.
Right? And it has, I don't know if many people know this, but it has the same effect that heroin has.
Yes.
Isn't that wild?
Absolutely.
So
let me stop you there. You kind of when you say dating, tell me what that means to you. What does dating look like to you? In other words, what are you doing for this 4 or 5 months that you're not dating but you're seeing? How's that work?
That's a good question. What I say is that you be friends with at least a couple of people who you like. You don't have to be friends only with one person because then you focus too much on that one person.
Right.
Don't have sex.
Right.
Straight and clear. No sex, please. 5 to 6 months at least. Control yourself. If you are being friends, going out, and by being friends I mean you go out, you have for dinners or lunches or whatever. Do your thing.
But isn't that actually, if I take a woman to the theater or to lunch, isn't that dating?
No, you're still being friends.
Well, most people would see that as dating.
Well, you know what? Make your rules. Make your own rules. This is something that I did.
Right.
So I attracted my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful husband. I made my own rules. I said, you know what? I'm not going to follow anybody's rules. Make your own rules, and your rules should be. And I've made a lot of men do this, and they just love it because it's a new concept. That make it clear that listen, I just want to be friends for 5 months, 6 months, whatever works for you. 4 months, 8 months. I want to be friends for a while before we actually get intimate, before we actually want to date, and make that very clear. You know what will happen? You'll remove the tension out of dating.
Absolutely, I can see that for sure.
Because that tension of, oh, does he like me? Is he calling me? I see this happening every day. That tension and that stress often makes people make the wrong decisions.
Right.
So once you're friends and once you're clear that it's friends, and listen, if that person really cares for you, that person will hang around. I know that happened with my husband. We were friends for almost 2 years.
Is that right?
And it was great. It was great. And we're still friends. Our relationship is still based on that same kind of friendship. So I think it's a new concept, no doubt about it. Most people don't want to do it, but when they do it, they realize that this makes sense.
I started doing that a few years back. And the woman I ended up with, we're not together now, but we were together like 10 years, and that's how we did. We were friends for several months before getting into any kind of real relationship.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Well, I think it's like you say, it's not real prevalent, but it's wise. It doesn't that kind of go back to the times where they talked about having, you would court one another, and then you would have, when you got to the relationship part, you would have a long engagement, all intended to let the real you come out, so you know who you're really dealing with.
Yeah, because they say it takes 6 to 8 months for the real person.
Do you think it comes out then, or do you think sometimes it doesn't come out until you're in an intimate relationship?
The process starts in 6 to 8 months.
Right.
Of the real person to come out. It could take a long time. It could take a whole year.
Right.
for a lot of the issues, and we know this, that so many people have so many issues. A lot of people, there was somebody I counseled the other day, this person was with this person for I think 6 to 8 months, and I think almost 8 months, and he didn't even know that she was on certain meds, which
wow.
were messing with her mood.
Right.
So, why get into a relationship and then get to know all this stuff later? It doesn't make sense. Somebody got married. I know another guy who got married to this girl, and after getting married, he said, "Oh, I'm so excited. We'll have kids and stuff." She said, "Oh, I don't like kids. I never wanted to have kids."
Well, see, what you're talking about is eliminates about 80% of the population as far as their ability to even think about doing what you're talking. And I agree with what you're saying, but if you're 20 years old or 18 years old or 25 years old, how do you find that segment of the population? Are they?
You know what? It's very interesting. I've met 20-something-year-olds who are like that, who follow this principle. I've met 50-something-year-olds. I've met 30. Young kids these days are so smart. They know what is right for them. A lot of them, they know what is right. They're very mature. So it's really an individualistic issue. I don't think we can really generalize it, but I think we should at least put it out there.
Well, I think, just the nature of the people that you are meeting, because of the spiritual connection, regardless of the flavor of that spirituality, I think that tends to bring kind of a different individual anyhow, more grounded, more connected.
Right.
Yeah, so I think you would find far more success than you would, than you would in a general population out there.
Right, but you know what? I need a lot. It's very surprising, and I'm discovering all this now. Even here in New York, I meet a lot of people who I met this guy once, and he was not even on any spiritual path, but he was brought up Catholic,
right.
And he was like, "No, I'm not, going to have sex before I get married." So there are people like that.
Right.
I think it's important to at least introduce this concept and say, "Listen, give it a try. You've tried everything else. Not worked. Give this a try." That's what I say.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're out there saying it. I think it probably, will save a lot of children, and and maybe see the kind of things you're talking about really are the game changers for the world. If we don't we have to start doing things different in some of the smallest, most personal ways. Otherwise, there can't be a real change. So yeah, I think you're right on with all that. And
then lastly I always say that after you've like 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever, if you spend time with these people, if you like 3 people or 4 people and you're friends with them, and then you feel that you are gravitating towards one person who could be the right person, who you feel is the right person, then be very proactive and spend a lot more time with that person. See, often what happens is, and this is pretty much what happens, is people they meet on dating sites, they hang out for some time, 6 months, 8 months, and then like in a year or so, they're maybe even less than a year, they're engaged.
Right.
And then they get married. This happens all the time.
Or they move in together.
Or they move in together. Once you move in together, then it's the same thing.
Yeah, that happens probably more often than not, really.
Yes. So I say that once you like someone, you feel that this person could be the right person, give it more time and don't necessarily spend all your time in restaurants or in bars drinking.
Right.
Try to keep alcohol as much away as possible and try to be in a natural setting. That's a big one. Again, people don't talk about this often. Counselors don't talk about this often. But I think it's a good idea to spend as much time in natural setting, go out for hikes, go out for picnics, where the real person, you can start seeing the real person, start evaluating the values that both the individuals have been brought up with. Because that's going to come up later on.
Oh, for sure.
And on my website, we have this very interesting thing, which actually the press loved. I think Fox or some other magazine, they really liked this. They talked about these 20 questions that we have, it are very different. One of them is, would you like to spend time with your partner's family after you get married?
That's an interesting question.
These things come up. You know, anybody who's been married, you know that, listen, some people just don't want to have anything to do with the in-laws.
Right.
And some people just love the idea of being, with in-laws and family and all that. Then there's a question like, would you send your children to Sunday school after you get married? Again, I've seen many parents conflicted on these issues now, you know. So these things it's a good idea to bring all these things up because inevitably, you can be like a Oscar-winning actress or an actor, but inevitably the charade will come down to the real person.
You got to get undressed somewhere, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So these are the tips that I talk about and I advocate and people use them and then they see the difference.
So that was number 5?
That was number 7. I think I mixed the last 2 tips together.
Okay, we got them all. We did all of them. Well, you know, I think that your tips are. I can tell they're from your experience, and they are valid. They're like totally valid. The biggest, the biggest thing is some of the habits that we come into this idea of dating with. Can be a little tough. Let's talk a bit about this idea of online dating. Did you meet your husband online, or how did you meet your husband?
No, I did not meet my husband online. I actually met him at a meditation center. I was volunteering there, and I just saw this lonely guy, and I thought I'll introduce him to other friends, and we were friends. We were friends. I used to have I still have meditation sessions in my house. We do once a month for 5 hours. We have meditation. So I invited him for one of those sessions, and we were all meditating together, and that's how we met and we grew a friendship.
It's a great way to meet in meditation. That's very powerful. So, what's the experience that, there are a lot of different dating sites out there, and I hear a lot of feedback from people who like their experience isn't all that great with online dating. I would think that with what you're doing, the chances of a good experience are probably much better.
Yes, because most of the people are spiritual, and then we also keep mentioning to our clients that, guys, please try to be friends. Try to be friends with as many people as possible for a while. So they get that on our website.
Do you have some way to track what goes on in your you have some kind of feedback that's coming to you where you really know?
No, our site, it's interesting. Our site, Match My Spirit, it's more like a community. It's not like, we're not eHarmony, we're not Match.com, we're not one of those big sites.
Right.
It's more a community. I send about 3 emails every week. And it's a personal email. It's coming from me. I talk about my experiences. I give them tips. Or something I've read. So it's like a community. So I know a lot of the members, not all, because of course we have a lot of members, and I always say, if you guys have any questions, just email me, and so it's more like a community. And that's the flavor of Match My Spirit. So we don't really do that kind of tracking. Of course we can. We have the tools to do it.
Sure.
But no, we don't do. What we say is that be careful. Be very standard common sense tips I give my members. Say, if you're going for a date, take a cab and go for the first time. Don't leave your bag. Don't drink. Those kind of basic things. But otherwise, most of them, they just become friends.
Right.
And then they meet up, and we've got some good connections. People have gotten married and all, so it's very cute.
Well, I think the idea of having it evolve into a community is that's especially neat how that happened for you. Because what I can see is that what might not have clicked early on, might develop into something because of the community, like you with your husband through meditation, and it grew as opposed to something that was just bang in your face. Oh, this is the wonderful one for me. So
right.
They have more of an opportunity because of the community factor, I would think.
Right.
Yeah. rather than just okay. I'm George. Let's meet for coffee, right? Or I'm Naini. Let's go. I tried online dating once. I think my experience with it wasn't that great, so I didn't pursue it any further than that. But that doesn't mean much, really. I mean, a lot of people, they pursue that for quite a while before they finally meet someone they really like a lot.
Yeah, you know how it is. What
Yeah.
has to happen, things happen. When the time is right, things happen. So
Yeah.
I just feel you should be out there. If you're looking for something, if you want a job, you need to be out there and
You need to be in the marketplace.
need to be in the marketplace.
Absolutely. So you do also do workshops. You're doing something with Dr. Armand Diaz on the 23rd.
Yes.
What's that? Creating joy in your relationships. Talk to me about that.
Yes. Since we're in New York, and like I said, it's a community. I often do workshops with therapists, relationship therapists. Dr. Armand Diaz is a astrologer, so we're talking at the New Life Expo this Sunday, October 23rd at 1 o'clock. We're going to be talking about the relationship between astrology and spirituality, and if you're looking for a partner, how astrology can also help you, in that connection. So that's one workshop that we're doing. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
So are you and your husband compatible as far as the astrological signs, or
astrologically, I haven't really checked it with my husband.
things are going well enough? Either some of these things you don't even need to check anymore, right?
Yeah, no, by the time I met him, I was pretty set about my intuition had really kicked in right, and finally, after getting beaten up a lot, the wisdom started coming out.
And you've been together how long? You've been married how long?
We are married for 1.5 years, but we've been together for about 4 years.
Okay, cool. And you have your children from a previous marriage?
Yes, I have a son. I have a 7.5-year-old boy from a previous marriage, and my husband has a son from a previous marriage too. So it's great. We have 2 boys.
And does your husband's boy live with you also?
No.
Right. And you've got a book coming out?
Yes, we have a book coming up called 7 Tips for Peaceful Dating.
Yeah, which that whole that whole concept is a nice concept. Back when I was 21 years old, I'm not sure I was all that interested in peaceful dating. I had a whole different concept of what relationships were back then. I'm not even sure you could call them relationships, huh? So, when is that due out?
Say that again?
When is your book due out?
Oh, probably by spring.
Well, you have to let me know. We'll help you promote it.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So you also work with children? On how to raise children spiritually?
Yes. Oh, that is something I'm very, very passionate about. That's like my thing. Well, I used to, I've been teaching Sunday school for about, I think, 12 years almost, at the New York City Center of Centralization, and we teach children how to meditate and calm down and see the different aspects of life. We talk about karma, basic things about karma. And some of those kids, 11 years ago, they were, of course, kids, and now they're in college, and I see how they carried that knowledge, that experience with them.
Absolutely, I can imagine.
So it's very heartening to me. And then I was invited to teach meditation at one of the New York City libraries. And I did a class with these little kids, 7 to 12 years old, and it was fantastic. If anybody was there and you could feel the energy of these kids meditating together, that purity, that was so charged in that atmosphere, was amazing.
Well, plus they're so open at that stage of their life.
And they're still, believe it or not, these kids who are always on an iPod or video games or whatever, but they could sit still for a good 20 minutes.
Right.
So now I passionately teach meditation at the libraries in all different areas, of New York, and all different kids from different families, different races, and it's amazing and something I really love to do.
Do you do anything with problem children, children that are from dysfunctional homes,
Yes.
or
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, you know what? I feel that if it, like as Maya Angelou said, people forget what you do for them. People forget what you say, but people never forget how you make them feel.
Absolutely.
This is something that always stays in my mind, that how you make someone feel is really the delicious part of that moment, for lack of a better sentence. So with children, I do the same thing, and make them feel something that they've not probably felt before. And the feeling is feeling of tremendous love and tremendous importance, so that their self-esteem is picked up right in a minute. And then when they're more open to introduce this concept of meditation and calming them down and relaxing and making them feel that they're in a nice, friendly environment and they can be themselves. So children from problem homes, children with some medical issues, they're open to it because the soul is the same, as we all know. So that's
isn't it really about the same with spiritual or religious practices? It's I think the thing that's missing in so many churches, why so many they're losing their congregation, is just that fact that we talk to the head, but we don't give people that experience with a higher power, and that's key, at least in my world. And without that, we're dealing with opinions, because it's experience that keeps me coming back.
You've got to come to New York, George. We're going to meditate together at our center.
I would love to meditate at your center. I'd like to meditate with you very much. Another thing I wanted to talk with you about. You, I believe, could create a fantastic show similar to the one I'm doing, based on your matchmyspirit.com, and I'd love to promote you, have you on our network. If you're interested in doing something like that, we'll talk about it.
We can talk about it, sure.
Sure, good. I mean, you have so much to offer in the way of sanity and and I can feel the love come from you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, it's true. It's very, very neat. So, what other kind of things would you like to talk about this evening that we haven't talked about yet? And most of us have something that, like I talk with a lot of people, and we cover a lot of ground. But then there's always that one thing that we didn't cover. Is there anything that we didn't cover here tonight that you'd like to talk about?
I always love to say this, and so that others don't make the mistake that I made in the former part of my life, is don't go by the rules, don't go by the norms, don't go by what you're conditioned with. Really go with your heart in any decision in your life.
So when you talk about heart, are you talking about heart, or are you talking about the solar plex area where the intuition is?
Intuition, that voice.
Yes.
That intuition, that voice, each one of us has it.
Yes.
And I think it's so important to go with that. I've made many, many decisions in my life, but I've not gone with that voice that was talking to me and saying, don't do this, do this. I didn't do it because of fear.
Right.
Most of the time we make wrong decisions is because of extreme emotion or fear. So that's one advice that I also give to my son and to a lot of young kids too, and even older people, that don't go by what is expected of you. See what is in your heart. Take time to see what your heart is telling you.
And that's why meditation is so important, because you can't have the clarity to really hear that intuitive voices. Too many other voices in our head to really catch hold of that.
And my second advice is go to a hardware store, get a big hammer, and break your TV.
and do the television in. Well, how about the only problem is you still got the computer and the iPad and the iPod and
Don't break that.
all that we have. You know, it's very much part of the fabric of our lives anymore. Well, you know, there's one thing I would like to talk with you about. Talk to me about karma and what that means to you and what part in your life that plays.
Well, you know, karma, the karma, it's like cause and the effects of that cause. That's the definition of it. It's so simple. Our heart, again, this is talking about intuition. Our heart knows karma. Our heart knows if you're doing something right or something wrong, each one of us. So, simple. Just before you do something, think about it. What you're doing, what effect it's going to have on the other person. A lot of times, and I've seen this happen often in different cultures all over the world, is that we say things to someone because of our own preconceived anger or preconceived emotions, not realizing what that can do to the other person.
Right.
So I think that karmic bond that we have with ourselves is a big one. So think before you say something to someone is a big one. You know, it's very elementary. You know, think before you talk. It's very elementary. But most of us don't do that because we're coming up with our own anger, and of course we project that anger. So I think where karma is concerned, it's like, I'll say, my connection with karma is think before you say something to someone. And if you're saying something to someone, genuinely think about what the other person needs. Like recently I was at a radio show here in the city.
Uh-huh.
And they asked me, they said, you know, what is the one advice you would want to give? I say, when you're sitting with someone, like right now I'm sitting with you, you are the most important person for me.
Absolutely.
At this moment. Everything else is forgotten. You know, I teach about networking. I do seminars here in the city about how to network in New York, how to network on a tight budget. I do seminars with big companies here. And the first thing I tell them is that forget about yourself. Just think of the other person who's sitting in front of you and what you can do for that person. And that is related to karma, you know, in a big way. What you can do for the other person, what you're doing for the other person.
So I'm hearing two things here. I'm hearing that, you know, what goes around comes around, and to be present is especially important, and to really listen to whoever you're talking with. You know what? You and I have we've devoured an hour already. I'm not sure where the time goes, but I've had a really nice time with you tonight, and I hope your experience was good. And we'll have to do this again at some point, and we'll have to talk further.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you've been a great guest, and we're going to be sending people to matchmyspirit.com and go over there for networking. You don't need to date, just to find like-minded spiritual people. Thank you for joining us, Naini. I really had a good time with you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, she's a pleasant lady. She's really a nice woman, Tom. I'm glad we had her on this evening. My guest next week is Kurt Remington. Simple meditation. He's a good guy, a good guest. Come back. And next Tuesday, 9 p.m. And in the meantime, don't forget to accentuate the positive and have a fantastic week.